It's kind of peaceful being in a truck stop at night. I mean, granted, they're pretty soundproof trucks, but I mean, I'll spin the camera around even though I probably shouldn't mess with it. If you look over there, and I'm sorry it's kind of shaky, there's some guys over there kind of chit-chatting, talking. Clouds are looking nice. It's kind of just peaceful out here. There's not really a whole lot going on. So it's the way it should be, right? Not a whole lot going on. All right. So I guess we should talk about what's been going on. I mean, that's, after all, the reason why you're here, right? Hopefully. So I got up early. I did my drop in South Carolina, and even though I suspected that they probably just had this weird vibe that they probably wouldn't be open till 8, I did ask. One of the since every location's different in pods, I decided to ask at what point. I said, so at what point do you start serving semis? And she kind of gave me a weird look and said, 6 a.m. We were 6 a.m. to 3. I'm like, okay. I mean, it sounds like a dumb question because most of their hours are 6 a.m. to 3. But then there's a lot of people also that just, they say, no, we're gonna concentrate on semis first. Or, no, we don't start, the guy that deals with semis doesn't come in until 8. So it's like, great, I have to sit around here for 2 hours doing nothing. So I got there, offloaded, pretty streamlined process, and then drove on. That was in South Carolina. Then I drove on to Savannah. And a little bit of a trouble finding my location over there, but it was back in the behind this warehouse. The address was on this one road, but then the actual location was not at the address. It was actually back up, go down this other little road, and then between some warehouses, and it was back on the far side of the building. You couldn't see it from the actual address that where the GPS took me. And I dropped there, still had not been pre-assigned. So I asked if I could hang out there for a bit, and he's like, yeah, sure. And so since I had pulled down to the end and backed into one of the parking spaces, people could still back straight up past me. It's like the way that they normally do that is you back in all the way, and then they their main ramp is over there, so they come down there into their warehouse, and then they load and unload you here, and then that semi pulls away to strap up and stuff like that over there, and then like either their own personal local vehicles will come in there and they'll load up with their forklift there, or another truck will pull in there at that point, but you pull out in order to strap up. But I got there and broke the straps. I went and told them, I'll go break the straps, and got them to sign the paper, and then I was hanging out, and since I didn't pull all the way back, I actually alley docked in, feeling more comfortable with it every day. Still not going to say that it's an expert thing by any means, but if I'm trying to go between a couple of trucks, it's feeling better now. I don't feel like, panicky like I used to. But I do have a fun story to tell you, because after that, it was kind of interesting because I stayed around there. I did that drop. I completely offloaded and stuff by 10:30. But then I sat around there until about 2. I mean, it might have even been 9:30. I can't remember. But I didn't have anything to do. I just sat around there waiting for a load, hoping to get pre-assigned. And nothing happened. So I got kind of, frustrated. And there was a Love's that was the right on 95. It ends up being that my family, my family was going down there, not exactly to where I was. They were going down a little bit farther down the coast, but they happened to be driving right through there. So I said, hey, if you want to have dinner, that would be really cool. So if I'll stop at this Love's. And they said, yeah, sure, we'll go right through there. And so they stopped, and they had not seen this truck yet. So they actually came aboard and sat in here. And since there's 5 of us, it was all kind of tight, but I had one child that went up in the upper level, and she was enjoying it up there. And then they were enjoying getting their pictures taken and, sitting here in the truck, and we were all talking. And it was my wife's birthday, so I gave her her birthday gifts that I got from Sleepy Hollow. I think I mentioned it already, but I parked in Armonk, and then asked permission if I could stay in their lot for a bit, and then go and take an Uber over to see Sleepy Hollow. And he was kind of like, okay, in the village, Sleepy Hollow? I'm like, yeah. He's like, okay. And so I went over there and then Ubered back after wandering around there for a little less than 2 hours. But that was pretty cool because I was able to get some birthday gifts for my wife. And one of them was a candle that's made from the flowers from the Hudson. Another one was the actual Sleepy Hollow book, like the Legend of Sleepy Hollow, the animated version from like 1956 or whatever it is. And that it was so crisp and new that it had never been opened. So the spine had never been cracked open. It was like, slam closed. And then if you gently start to open it, then you're breaking the spine. So I said, that has never been opened. And she's like, oh yeah, I see what you mean. It's kind of cool. She's like, I don't know if I should open it either. I'm like, well, it's your choice. And then there was one other thing I got, and that was different teas that were made there in the Hudson area. And they're all pumpkin flavored, pumpkin spices of some sort. White girls have fun with, I guess, pumpkin stuff in the fall, and that's when I'm recording this. That's where the meme comes from about pumpkin spice and white girls and just going crazy over it. so they of course happen to have their pumpkin spice, and they were all happy about that. I know it's a stereotypical thing on the internet, but I mean it's fun, it's funny, and they do like it, so they say that's fine, you could be stereotypical, I like pumpkin spice. It's kind of funny, no harm or ill intention or whatever. But and then after that I went and had a rack of lamb. Not a rack of lamb. Jeez, what am I saying here? A rack of ribs. Full rack of ribs over at the Applebee's. And I must say, I've never had their ribs before. I thought about getting a burger, but then the ribs were just calling my name. I don't know about all Applebee's, but that one did a good job with the ribs. And I was just like, I mean, granted, I usually will eat a portion of cashews, a portion of some sort of fruit, usually dried fruit. Right now I have cranberries back there. Craisins, I think they are. And then usually like a portion of some sort of meat, like a meat, one of those fatty meat sticks, or some Sweet Baby Ray's, jerky or something like that. Anyway, I just eat various different other things, but I don't have anything heavy. But what was kind of cool is after eating that, I was not hungry the next day. So, I mean, my family left and they went on to the beach and they had a blast. They were sending me pictures. I'm like, man, y'all had so much fun without me. That might be why they had so much fun, because it was without me. They'll probably have much more fun if I'm not there to be me. No, I mean, I kid you not. We get along great. We get along great, and they just had a lot of fun. That's good. So many times throughout my life, they've gone on vacations without me because I've been working, and I work long hours. So, but anyway, so I didn't get pre-assigned that day. Next day, I'm sitting there in the truck, bored, twiddling my thumbs, trying to figure out what to do. Just biggest irritation to me is sitting there off the clock. Off the clock, nothing to do. And I understand sitting there off the clock. I understand why you want to. That way you save your drive hours. But at the same time, if I'm sitting there through no fault of my own, I wish I were being compensated. I mean, granted, I know in an era where everybody wants free shipping and the prices of fuel are going skyrocketing, there's no reason that they would want to go out of their way to pay you to sit there. And I can't imagine a trucking company wanting to do that. But it would be nice. That's what I'm saying. So anyway, I was sitting there, and after about 1 o'clock, I was like, you know what? The day before, I had, stopped at a Pilot Flying J where I have shower power, so I can use the shower over there as many times as I want. But staying overnight at Love's, we don't use Love's at Schneider, or at least we don't have the rewards card, and they usually try to get you to fuel up at Pilot or Flying J. So I don't want to pay for a shower when I could go to a nearby Pilot or Flying J. But in where I was, the Savannah, Georgia area, there's only one Pilot anywhere near there, and that's Port Wentworth. And that Pilot's annoying because there's a lot of reserved spaces, and on the place that's not reserved is this highly cramped front lot where there's not a lot of room. So anyway, I sat around at the Loves until about 1. And then after that, I said, I'm not going to get pre-assigned before 3. I just had this gut feeling I'm not going to. So I said, it's going to be another day lost. So I said, I'm going to go ahead. It was a Friday. It was a Friday, so I was sitting there, saying, there's no chance of me getting pre-assigned. Actually, no. That was a Saturday. I take that back. Because I got up that morning and I had had the ribs still in my stomach from the night before, so I was not hungry. Anyway, 1 o'clock, I go on over to the pilot, which is about, I go ahead and pre-trip, head on over there, and I'm circling the lot, not wanting to get the reserved parking spaces. Because it's a Saturday, I know full and well Pods is not open on Sunday, so I'm going to go ahead and shut down for a 34. If I don't have a job, I'm going to go ahead and shut down for a 34. That way I have full 70 hours to start next Monday, since I got to be there off work for a Sunday anyway. So at this point, I'm like, all right, got to find a non-reserved parking space because I don't want to have to pay for the spot for 2 days. And so I'm circling around slowly, and then I pause a little bit and I circle around, and I'm looking, and no one looks like they're moving out or doing anything. So I circle around from this side and then circle onto the back side and then circle back around. Little did I realize that there was a flatbed with a bunch of lumber on there. He pulls out, and a bobtail that was coming in the other side whips in there. I'm like, he just pulled off of the road, and he pulls right over there, sees it, and pulls right in. I'm like, great. Full parking space, and this bobtail steals it. Because bobtails, you can stack them 2 deep, and they can go pretty much anywhere. But, I was like, great, thanks for that. Anyway, so I drive around a few more times. I'm driving slow, and then I see a guy walking back to his truck, and I say, hey, are you about to leave your spot? And he just kind of looks at me and says, no, why? He's driving a bobtail. I said, he says, no, why? I said, because if you were, I was going to ask, I was going to hang out and wait for your spot. He's like, no, but I can move behind this other bobtail if you want this spot. And I'm like, would you mind? He's like, no. I'm like, that would be so awesome. Thank you. So I guess he was only going to be there for a couple of hours or something. Anyway, he pulls forward. And then he starts waving me. He kind of pulls forward, I guess, to block it. And then I pull past him. But here's the thing about that Port Wentworth pilot. I'm driving a flatbed. You're not supposed to back on an angle more than about 60 degrees. Granted, I'm empty, but because then it gets really unstable. Because you're not like a full trailer width. You're more like inline roller skates. This extra side is just off the side, so it's more like down the middle. So it starts to wobble like crazy, and so I try to set up and I try to angle, and I'm just not steep enough. I'm going right toward the bobtail spot, like right, going about a third of the way in. So I stop, I pull forward, and I try to do it again, and I'm like a quarter of the way over into the spot I need to be. At this point, I'm like, and he just kind of looks at me, and I say, I'm gonna pull around. He says, okay. So at this point, I pull around, and then I come in and try to set up better. The thing is, though, the less room you have, the tighter you have to make your turn. You also have to set up differently. And at the time, I did not know how to set up for as tight of a alley dock into that spot as I needed to. After he helped me, and he did actually help me, because I started to set it up, and I started to do the exact same thing again. No matter how far I turned that wheel, I could not jackknife it around in there. And so, and I was trying not to exceed 60 degrees. Not going to happen. So he stops and comes over, and I anytime I'm backing up, I have my window down. He comes over and says, yeah, you didn't do your setup properly. So he says, follow what I tell you. I'm like, okay. He stands there. He says, all right, pull forward a little bit, pull forward, turn it hard left. And what he was basically telling me is if the spot is like here, there was another a truck over here, and it was sticking out of the spot, a little too far. But anyway, he had me go past to the point where the back of the trailer was like just beyond it. And then he had me turn hard left where I was like starting to go around this way. So the front of it wasn't just angled like at a right angle. It was angled hard this way. And I'm sure, expert drivers like, many of you probably are, if there's anybody watching. I was like set up to probably about a 45-degree angle, and the rear of the trailer was like this kind of an angle. So what he has me do at this point is turn hard and then turn hard all the way to the right and start to back up. So I'm literally pivoting just around this truck here. And I felt like, okay, I should be straightening up now. He says, no, hold the wheel, hold the wheel. And I did until I get to about this point, about maybe 30 degrees. And at this point, he has me straighten up and turn hard to the left. So I do this, and I start to turn too much because I'm over too far. And then he says, pull forward and to the right. So at this point, I pull forward and to the right, but I'm barely here. And at this point, I'm just going to be able to go forward and backward. So he goes ahead and says, okay, you're like in line. So what you're going to have to do is go forward to the left a little bit, and then back to the right, and then forward to the left. And so I basically had to do this number a little bit, and I had to correct where the tractor was in relation to the trailer. And I had to take the trailer from too far this way, basically back into this angle. So I know that's kind of hard to see. With his help, I did it in probably 15 to 20 minutes. Luckily, no one else was trying to go through that area. They were all going to reserve parking, or they were going into the fuel island. But this is where it gets bad. He was very good about helping me position. I got in the spot. I was like, thank you so much, man. New driver. I really appreciate it. He's like, he smells and whatever. There was a girl that says she was a 4th generation trucker. She actually comes over and says, are you an instructor? Because you should be, and praises him and stuff. And then she walks over to me and says, when did Schneider start doing flatbed? And I said, when we got the pods accounts, I guess. She says she used to drive for Schneider for about a year. Now she's with Western Express. She says that the stuff that she normally does, like blindside, alley docks and stuff, she does that a lot. In truck parking lots. She says, I do that a lot. She says it takes a little while to get in there sometimes because she will have to make sure everything's right. But she says the stuff that Schneider used to tell her don't do, Western Express loves that she does. I guess it makes her more efficient. But anyway, as I was talking to her, new pre-assignment received. I'm like, are you kidding me? I just got into this spot 3 minutes ago. And it's telling me pre-assignment. I'm like, well, I look at it and I got like an hour before they're going to close because it's like 2:00. And I look down and I'm like, so I look at the job and it says must be picked up today. I'm like, oh. So I look over and the guy is gathered up a couple of things, and he turns around and goes back toward the pilot, and I watch him. And as soon as he goes back inside the pilot, I pull forward and I leave. I felt so bad because it's like this poor dude, he gave up his parking spot for me. And then he spent 15 to 20 minutes helping me get in this spot. And then I pull straight back out within 5 minutes. I mean, I felt like such a jerk. I'm laughing saying, gosh, this is so bad. So ridiculous. Anyway, I got there, loaded up, no problem. And at this point, I have a decision. I have like 9 hours left. I can drive overnight and whatever and park someplace and then drive overnight again to get to where I'm trying to go and then shut down. And then probably by the time I got there at that point, I would arrive in New York is where I was going. And it would probably be after their hours, after the pod's hours by the time I got there. Mainly because I'd be driving during the day. First of all, the first day, that was a Saturday. So I could have gotten up there and then driven, overnight and stuff like that on Sunday. But then by the time I stop and then go there, I didn't think I would be able to get there in time because I was also starting to run low on my hours. So what I decided to do instead is I got on the interstate. I went north about 100 miles or so and then shut down. So at that point, I shut down and went ahead, and it was like 4:00 p.m. No, it was a little after that. And I found a parking spot at a place, and I went ahead and parked there for the night. Shut down, went inside and took a shower and settled down for the night. Next morning, I got up early, like, 1:30. I got out to the truck, did pre-trip and stuff like that. Hit the road, and because I was driving on a Sunday, I drove overnight, and then by the time I was starting to run out of hours. I was actually going to try to meet up with a friend of mine in the Baltimore, Maryland area. but I pulled into the Maryland Welcome Center on I-85, and he decided he was going to sleep late. So I'd been communicating with him the day before about meeting up and probably only having like 3 or 4 hours before I'd have to wake up or before I'd have to go to sleep in order to wake up and drive from like midnight or whatever to get to where I was going. And he slept late, didn't get my message. So he was like, yes, sorry, I'm just now getting up. And this is like right before I said I would be arriving. So he says, yeah, so we probably should do this some other time. So I was like, okay, because he'd probably have to get up and maybe grab something to eat. Maybe not. Maybe he'd just come straight to me, but it still would take a good hour and a half. So at that point, I have another friend that I had recently learned was in the area that I was probably going to stop in, which is a truck stop right off of the Delaware Memorial Bridge, I think is what it's called. And it's a Flying J in Carneys Point, New Jersey, barely in New Jersey. And so I sent him a text message saying I'm about 90 minutes, about an hour and a half away from being at the Flying J at Carneys Point, New Jersey. I said, if you want to hang out, let me know, and I'll let you know when I get here. I went ahead and drove there. I got there in a little bit over 90 minutes because there's that exit off of, I think it's 295, wherever it is, right there. You can't get off on the exit and go across because they have the middle of the exit. They have it blocked. So you have to go down and then loop back around and come back. There's a Pilot on one side, a Flying J on the other side. The two aren't connected. The Pilot has 8 parking spaces. The Flying J has like 200. So it's really annoying because you have to go down and then come back unless you get off on the Deepwater exit right as soon as you get off the Delaware Memorial Bridge. And then you have to turn right, or turn left and then right. I didn't know that until I looked. I've been there enough times at this point to shut down. I might as well look it up. So anyway, I pull into the Flying J and I find a parking spot because there's plenty of them at that point. And as I'm backing in, I look back and my friend is back there with his son. I'm like, man, he went ahead and came here. So as soon as I backed in, I said, I got to do my post trip and I got to do all my stuff. And then I'm done for the night. And he's like, yeah, sure. So then we went off and had pizza. And then we just stayed out and hung out for a while at the Flying J, talking for like 4 hours. It was awesome. He's a great guy. Next morning, got up early, drove the rest of the way to New York. And by this point, I communicated and sent a message to Schneider saying, if you pre-assign me before, and I get a job before like 7 a.m., I can pick up there, but any job you give me, I would have to shut down for a 34, and I could start early the next day. And they say, no, we don't want to go ahead and get you a job if you're going to shut down for a 34. I said, okay, fair enough. They said, we can put you on the list. And I said, can you put me on it for like a late afternoon on like the day of my 34? And they said no, because they could tell you have to pick up before the end of the day on that day before 3, and you wouldn't be able to do that. I'm like, okay, fine. That makes sense. I get it. I mean, it's a wise decision. Me, I just didn't want to have to wait or go back. So anyway, I go ahead and do my drop, and then I'm looking around, and in the Pilots and Flying J's on the north side of New York, they don't have a whole lot of parking spaces, or they're really designed kind of weird. So I ended up going over to one in Connecticut, Milford, Connecticut, and that's where I shut down for my 34. Today I'm at the end of my day off, and I'm about to lose my mind. I am not the kind of guy that just likes to sit around all day and do nothing. Granted, I know a lot of people probably sleep. They probably just do other things. Me, I'm too energetic for that. I got here at like 9:30, 10 a.m., went into the Wendy's, got myself a Baconzilla, double Baconzilla, Baconzilla, whatever it's called, and just chowed down, had some tea, drank like a Celsius that I got for free from my points and stuff, and I'm just chilling out here. And by like 2 in the afternoon, I'm bored out of my mind. I watch movies, I do everything else. I watch even bad movies. I'm just bored. The camera I use to do my driving, I record my forward camera, drive forward camera. But unfortunately, the camera I'm using right now is Insta360 X3, which means that if you record a time lapse, it has to do it in 360. So it takes the front lens and the rear lens, which are both 4K, 180 degrees, and it basically stretches the 4K image to 180 degrees. I don't care anything about the rear, so I never look at it. All I do is I crop it, and then I do the time lapse facing out the front, and it does like 1 frame per second, so it's like 2 frames per minute, which means over the course of a 12-hour drive, it's like 24 minutes long. So, but my laptop is old, and the Insta360 records in a proprietary format, so I have to render it, and it spends hours rendering on that laptop. And half the time, it will get 4 or 5 hours in and then glitch. And suddenly it will forget everything. And it will just glitch out and say, well, corrupt file. I mean, you can still watch up to that point, but it's really annoying. Anyway, I won't. So basically, I won't continue on this. But what I will say is, soon I'll be getting a DJI Action 4 that will allow me to record the front-facing video in 4K in like a regular screen, and then I can crop in if I want to, and then correct. It also has horizon leveling, so it's not going to be like I take a turn and it's like, whoa! Shouldn't be doing that. It should just stay straight horizon. Now, one thing I did want to clarify is I watched back the last vlog entry, and I realized I was probably a little confusing with something I said. So I thought I would elaborate a little bit and say it again. This is my very bad drawing of the way it looks in the Northeast. This is Boston up there at Cape Cod. Come down here. This is Long Island. Like I said, bad drawing. And there's New York. There's Baltimore. Actually, that's Philly, Baltimore, and DC. And this is the ocean, and these are the little, areas that you cut in. When they calculate the miles that they want you to drive, I don't know if all companies do this, but I know Schneider does. What they'll basically do is they'll say, okay, and you see this little line that goes through there, straight through New York, through by the side of Philly, through Baltimore, DC. This is the path that it wants you to take. That's how they calculate their miles. Now, here's the thing. That is a truck route. They're not going to send you down and tell you this is your route, and it's a non-truck route, and then suddenly you're not getting paid for a route you can't take. But what they do is, you see this little line right there? That is the line that is using truck routes, including toll roads, including things like the New Jersey Turnpike, which they say they don't want you using. Now, if you use your GPS here, what they're going to tell you to do is go around New York City. And then don't necessarily take the turnpike down. Take all these little back roads, like the 216 or 206, and take maybe Highway 1 or whatever it is, and then go down and cut down a couple of these back roads. The problem is that I have with that is if it based the mileage that it pays you on based on a direct route that might take, let's say, a total of 16 hours to get where you're going, and they then will take you to pull off on a side road that's also a truck route, but it's avoiding a toll road like the New Jersey Turnpike, and they tell you to take it, and it makes your commute no longer 16 hours, but because of all these starts and stops and the speed limit, that gets down to like 25 or 30 miles an hour in some of these truck routes and back roads and stuff like that, it increases your drive time from maybe 16 hours up to maybe 19 or 20 hours. I'm not kidding about that. Sometimes in some of these back roads it makes you take, it will increase your route when you could just go straight down. It will increase the amount of time by 2 or 3 hours, depending on where you're going. To me, that's annoying that the company doesn't just take the expense and write it off, where they just send you straight on through. I understand why they don't, but it's annoying to me when they don't calculate the miles, because I have actually looked at it. I have looked at the route that it wants me to take, and I have compared that to the total number of miles. Like when I bring it up on the GPS, when I'm at one location and I say how many miles to the next location, I see it's paying me for 56. The GPS is 58. Then I will say, okay, I look at the sheet and it will say it's 121 miles to the next location. And then I bring it up on the GPS and it says 132. And I'm like, so my miles are being calculated differently. Now I'm not going through and looking at the routes and saying here to here, what is the exact amount of miles, and then putting it together from there, but and figuring it out maybe in Truck Map or something like that. But what I can tell you is it's a bit annoying to me when the mileage never jives with what I'm being compensated for. And then when I have to deviate and use my miles or use my hours driving through back roads. Now, I understand that they don't want to, and this is the company can tell you to do whatever and you have to follow company policy. They're allowed to tell you the rules. This is an annoyance I have and something I find to be not fair, though. If they're telling me that I need that when my miles don't add up, when my miles are like 15 or 20, off over the course of 150 mile or a mile drive on these back roads and stuff like that, I know that they're probably calculating it on more direct routes than the one that they're sending me on. And if they do that, then they should allow me to take the same route if that's something that will help me get there faster, or if it's something that will help me get where I'm going. But the GPS loves to route me on all these back roads, these truck routes that will take me around. Now, I understand New York, you have to go around the actual truck route. But once you get past there, there's all these back roads and stuff that you can take. It routes you away from the New Jersey Turnpike. To me, that's highly annoying because all I want to do is get on 95 South and go. That's the New Jersey Turnpike, 95 South. And it doesn't want me to do that all the time, especially going north. On going north, it will say, no, you're going to take 206, and then you're going to take 1, and then you're going to take this, and it routes me all these extra ways, which increases the amount of time I'm driving. And that's, to me, a very annoying thing because all I want to do is make some money. And you could say, well, they want to also. I got on the New Jersey Turnpike's website, though, and calculated an entire run in a 53-foot trailer, and I wanted to see how much it was going to be, and it's not going to cost them a whole lot. Now, granted, if they charge me that, I don't want to end up spending $20 to $30 if I had to go down the entire New Jersey Turnpike. But that's because they're only paying me like 50 cents a mile or whatever it is. But anyway, that's my frustration, is when it calculates the miles and then the GPS will route me some other way. So I'm not being compensated for the entire route that I'm forced to travel. That to me is annoying. One other thing that I learned, and this is a bit annoying too. Schneider has a program that allows you to pay, and I don't know if it's just Schneider or if it's other companies too, but they will pay you your mileage, and 20 cents of it, I think, up to a certain cap per day, I think they said $65 per day or something like that, is not taxed at the regular rate. It's non-taxable. It's something that the IRS, I guess, allows them to do. So I'm getting 49 cents per mile because I'm a new driver and stuff. So don't balk at it. But I looked at my pay stub and I called accounting on this and said, why is it that I'm seeing 20 cents and 27 cents, 27 cents is taxable? And they said, because you're in the no tax on the 20 cents thing. And I'm like, yes. And they're like, well, we charge a 2 cent per mile fee for that. And I'm like, well, I didn't know anything about that. And they said, well, you can opt out if you want. To me, this is one of those irritating red tape, not really red tape. It's an irritating thing that, to me, companies should do it for you if you're on the front lines. It doesn't take anything for you to set it up. Now, if there is a fee or if there is something particular that you have to do every single time and it's someone that has to manually enter it or whatever, I understand. But to me, it sounds like you put it into a computer and the computer just automatically does it. But for the ability to pay not taxes on 49 cents per mile, I pay tax on 27 cents per mile, or in this case, 29 cents per mile, and then they dock me 2 cents. To me, that is nitpicking it and not working for your drivers. That's one of those little things that annoys me. I started to do some math, calculating approximate miles per week, and based on that, what 2 cents per mile would actually be. And if I'm being paid for 2,000, let's say I do 2,000, or for every 1,000 miles I drive, I looked at it and I said, that means that I would be paying about for that. I did the whole math thing, and I determined that there is a chance that I would make more money if I stayed in the tax-free thing if I take the deduction. Now, if I were just dropping and hooking at locations, picking up another trailer and going, and I spend almost all my day on the road and not so much time throwing straps and on back roads and stuff like that, and I'm just getting like 500 miles a day, no problem. That's going to be fine. 500, 600 miles a day. I can't do that though in the pods account when I have to stop and I have to wait for a customer, and then and you know, they say, well, we're only going to start, you know, serving semis at 8 a.m. and it's 6 a.m. so you're here early, and now I have to stop and waiting, and then I have to strap up for 20 or so minutes, and then I have to do all these load securement checks along the way and all these different things that nickel and dime you on your time clock. Because other people, I've seen people post online, and they will quite literally jump in their truck, they will just hightail it, drive 5 or 6 hours, then they'll stop, they'll eat lunch for half an hour, refuel, jump back on the road, drive another 5 or 6 hours, whatever it is, until they run out of time. And they're like posting like 650 miles. You know, they're like, I was finally able to get 675 miles again. And I'm like, geez, dude, that's like, if you are maxed out, if your truck is only capable of going 65 miles per hour, and you happen to be in a good span where you're not running into any traffic, you're not running into anybody who's in your way and slows you down, so you can just step on the gas and get 65 miles per hour all day for your entire time, 11 hours, 10 hours, you know, it'd be 650 miles. Add on top another 65, so 715 miles is the maximum amount of miles you're going to be able to do in a day. When you're governed at 65 miles an hour. And there was somebody who posted online that said he got like 680. I'm like, dude was like standing on the gas pedal, because if you are if you stand on the gas, it'll give you a little extra oomph when you're going up the hill and up a hill, and you might be able to hit 65 miles an hour. If you are in cruise control, it will slow down to maybe 63, maybe 64, depending on how steep it is, and it'll just kind of, you know, cruise a little bit up there at maybe 63 miles an hour. Then you're like, I want to be, you know, make sure I get where I'm going with maximum time left. So you step on the gas and it goes up to 65. You're like, okay, wish you'd just do that. But I understand it's cruise control. It wants to be easy. But still, 680 miles. That's a hustle. And that's also very risky, because by the time, I mean, he pulled off, I think he said he fueled up and he got food. So he took like almost an hour. But then by the time he jumped back on the road, he wasn't going to the bathroom, wasn't doing anything. He jumped on the road, hightailed it until he was about out of hours. And then he stopped. I mean, you're running very low on your hours of service at that point, probably like 10 minutes or so. He probably got lucky, pulled into a spot, or pulled into a customer site or a drop lot or something. It might be a drop lot that he was going to, and he knew exactly where it was, and it was never full or something. Because, you know, like right now, in this Flying J that I'm at right now, it's a pilot actually, it filled up. All the parking spaces were full up by about 9:30 this morning. And I only occasionally would see somebody pull out of this lot. Yesterday, for a good 2 to 3 hours, there was a truck that was parked right in front of mine, and I kept looking at him through the little crack in my window where you pull the curtains and it just sags right there. I was looking at that and I was like, why is he still out there? So I then sit here and I look, and he is waiting for a parking space. He was on the right-hand side of the lot. There was another truck on the other side, the left-hand side, or vice versa. He was on the other side. There was another truck waiting for a spot to go put up on that side. And they were waiting there for over 2 hours. And I was just watching it saying, man, he is waiting. And no one is leaving these spaces. Finally, I guess somebody left because he finally disappeared. Either that or he said, you know what, forget this. But if you're running out of hours, You can't just sit around and wait forever. If you're working for a company like Schneider, probably some of the other companies too, that probably have your truck GPSed, so that as soon as you start driving, it says, hey, you are driving, and it puts you into driving, according to your truck is connected up to the tablet. So it knows you're driving, and then it's going to start counting that as your drive miles, provided you go at least 5 miles an hour. There's been a couple of times that I pulled over at a rest area, and I've done my load securement check, and then I'm looking, and it's all completely standstill. So at this point, I'm like, why stomp on the gas if I'm just going to be pulling back on? So at this point, I just kind of coast my way up there, and at this point, I just pull back out, and then I slowly pull right back on, and then I'm stopped. I'm stopped on the entrance ramp behind a couple of semis, and I will get going down the road, and I'll be down 15 or 20 more minutes, and I look down, and I'm not in driving because I haven't exceeded 5 miles an hour yet, and I'm like, oh, I'm still in load securement, TIV, tire check, and trip planning paperwork. I'm still in on duty, non-driving, but I'm also in a standstill of traffic. So at that point, I'm like, okay, so you can go in and manually send yourself to driving if you want. Kind of interesting. Now, I've also been in standstill traffic before, and I've looked at it, and I've been approaching my 3-hour mark that I need to do a load securement check, TIV tire check, and I've been literally standing still in traffic on the interstate, and I'm like looking ahead, I see nothing, so I go ahead and pull everything, and I'm like, okay, trip planning paperwork on stuff on the tablet. I jump out, run around the truck real quickly, checking everything, and I'm like, please, as long as there's no security check, and I have not run into anything. Maybe I have to tighten like one thing, but I jump out. I have the thing in my hand. At this point, I don't put on my gloves because it takes extra time. I jump out, and I probably shouldn't do this on the interstate, but I've done it before if I know that I've literally not moved in 10 minutes. And so I will say, okay. And then I'll jump out, and I'll go ahead and check things, because I'll see people walking around on the interstate. Hey, what's going on up there? And that kind of thing. So I might as well. That way I don't, exceed my and violate, because I go over my 3 hours just because I've been sitting there in traffic. Anyway, circle around the truck. I'm back in after like not even 2 minutes. Because if you jump out, you use your key, and you do this, and you walk around, you do the pinch test on everything. You run around, you hit the tires, and they sound good. You run around there. It literally, if you don't waste time and you go around and there's nothing to tighten or anything like that, you're done in about 1 minute and 15 seconds by the time you throw the winch bar back in there and you get back in. It doesn't take long. And then by then, go back in the tablet and select driving. Unless you like do like what I usually will do is every time I stop and do my load securement check, I'll go ahead and double check where I'm supposed to go, what I'm supposed to do. I'll grab my dry erase board, and I'll write my current miles on my odometer and my timer on right there, and I'll say this is the time that I'm starting to drive again. That way I can keep track of my miles so I don't exceed 150 miles and my time on the clock, and that way I'm always in compliance. I don't ever want to play games. Some people are probably watching this and say it's not that big of a deal, but if you are an owner-operator, you might be able to sit in front and sit there and say, hey, look, I'm here, I'm stopped for the day, and you might just sit there on your tablet, or you might sit there on your phone until the parking space opens up, and it's not going to hit you. I don't know. I'm not an owner-operator. But there might be one watching, and if that's the case, tell me what, if your ELDs, if that gives you the ability to edit them, or you have to manually select that you're driving, and you can manually change it however you want. Seems like there's a lot of ways that if you wanted to, you can manipulate the ELD. And the FMCSA would then not know. Or maybe they could. Maybe there's a way. Maybe it depends on how you do it. I don't know. But I'm sure there's a way that truck drivers are able to get around there. Because I'm sure there's people that are just non-compliant on their logs, or they just ignore it. Or they're like, look, I'm going to put it in my logs, and I drove 11 and a half hours today, and I don't care. Maybe people are doing that. I don't know. You can't do that as a company driver. Not for a company that wants to play by the rules, at least. All right. Well, anyway, so today I got my pre-assignment for tomorrow, which makes me happy. I am Very pleased, because it's not sending me back to the place I just dropped at yesterday and then sending me down Long Island to another location, which is about 70 miles or so from that location. Instead, they're sending me from here, where basically I'm line of sight about 20 miles to where I need to be tomorrow. But because there's no bridge that goes from Long Island over to Connecticut, I have to go all the way back to New York. Then I have to cut around and then enter Long Island, go out there, and then I can come back. Then I'm going to have to go north and around New York in order to go back down south, because I got to go back to New Jersey. Now, going back, my GPS is probably going to send me down the New Jersey Turnpike. It doesn't seem to have an issue with me going down, only when I go back north. So I guess there's a pricing thing. I guess there's a difference in what it charges you on the New Jersey Turnpike. If you go north, it charges you differently, and it doesn't charge you nearly as much if you're leaving New York. I don't know. But what I know is that it routes me on the New Jersey Turnpike. So you could say, it's better to ask forgiveness than permission. Me personally, I have observed it telling me to take different routes depending on where I'm going north and south. And I did look at the New Jersey Turnpike toll estimator, and it does show difference in tolls going north and south, or at least when I did it, unless I screwed up something and put the wrong starting and ending at the same place. It looks like it's different going one way or the other. So maybe the way that Schneider looks at it is, if you're going south out of the city, it doesn't charge as much. But if you're going into New York, it might charge more. Therefore, that's why they take you on the back roads. So this is only my second time going south, so, from this area. So I'm going to try it tomorrow, because I'm leaving Long Island tomorrow morning, probably around 6:37 a.m. And I'm going to be driving in the daylight and dealing with that morning traffic going around New York and going through the turnpike, or going down the turnpike probably, unless it routes me a different way. If it routes me down US 1 and through 206 and stuff like that, I'll take it. Even though I know it's not paying for me to do that. They're probably basing miles off of what it would be going down the turnpike as opposed to where I'm driving, which to me is annoying, as I said before, but hey, what am I going to do? All right. At least I got my pre-assignment. And I'm in Connecticut right now. In 2 days, I expect to be in Orlando. Because tomorrow, I'm going to get up early. I'm going to be in Long Island. I got to drive down to New Jersey, Cinnamon Sin, pick up there. And then I'm going to drive down south and try to get into Ruther Glen, Virginia. There's a bunch of truck stops in that area, so I shouldn't have a problem parking. And I think there's like 2 Flying J's, or a Pilot and a Flying J. I think there's 2 Flying J's there at Ruther Glen, and Carmel Church is, I think, the way they say it, because there's no A. And there's 2 Flying J's. Each one of them has like 200 plus parking spaces. So I shouldn't have a problem parking there at like 3 or 4 in the afternoon. And if so, there's a Love's nearby, and there's a Mr. Fuel nearby also, so I can always stop at those. Shouldn't have a problem parking. And I'll probably be shutting down about 8 hours into my day. So, I mean, and if I happen to make a good time through New York and get down to Cinnamon Sin and get out of there, let's say if I somehow seem to be blessed enough to get out of there by 10 or so a.m., I should be able to get down there by 2, maybe 3. Hopefully. It'd be nice. Because then I would be able to stop for the day, get up and drive early, because I love nothing more than to be able to drive from about 1 or so a.m. and shut down by 1. And then the next day, just spend 4 hours driving into Orlando, and then I'd be done. Because that's where I'm headed. 2 different places in Orlando. And hopefully I'll be pre-assigned then, so I can go back north. I say north. They could send me out west. Right? Lately, I've been going up and down. I've been going from like Georgia, Florida, Tennessee, North Carolina, something like that, up to New York or New Jersey, and then back down, and then back up, and then back down, and back up, back down. That's all I seem to be doing. But then I don't want to sound ungrateful, because I've not had to deal with tire change just yet. Oh, but I have this feeling in my gut that they're going to send me someplace north very soon, right as soon as it freezes over, and I'm going to have to deal with it. I'll deal with it as I come to. And that's something that's very interesting. I thought when I went to Wilmer a couple of last month or the month before or whenever it was, they gave me 2 bags of tire chains, 2 sets. They said each one has 2 tire chains, and I said, "Okay, thanks." And they said, "I need 4," and they're like, "Yes." I talked to I talked to my driver coach, as they call it. I texted him and he said, "You're supposed to have 3 sets." He says the DOT requires you to carry 3 sets. I got to find out the answer to that, though. I need to send an email, or I tried to look it up online, wasn't able to find it. So I need to double check that. Am I supposed to carry a total of 2 or a total of 3 tire chains? For each side. Because I thought as long as you carried 4, that was compliant. And now he's telling me 6. So I got to find out, because if I need to go back and get more tire chains, I need to get it. Rather sooner than later. I've talked to you long enough. Let's call it there. Thanks for watching.